So we got private equities and 401k in the same sentence. President Trump had the executive order August 7th. I've already had 3 clients. It's only Monday. He just did it last week. I've had 3 clients already. I've been licensed for a decade in the financial industry. People, they're not panicking. I think more people want to know what's going on. So that's good. Kudos to everyone watching this. You want to know what's going on. But I can say this, I'm going to give you guys some stats, some figures, what a lot of this means, the pros, the cons, and then ultimately my thoughts. You can go on my YouTube. I'm going to break it down way more in depth. But first off, this shows why it's important to diversify your portfolio. A lot of you only have Social Security, maybe a 401k, if that. This is important, showing why you need to have money in different places. But when it comes down, let's hit you with the stats. About $43.4 trillion is in retirement assets, okay? $43.4 trillion is in retirement assets, a ton of money. Now, out that $43 trillion, between 9 to 12 trillion is in what you call DC plans, which are defined contribution. You used to have defined benefit. It used to be a benefit like a pension. Now it's defined contribution. That's what you're putting your money in. Between 9 to 12 trillion is in those assets, with the majority being 401k. All right, so a lot of us know that. And that's about 50 to 70 million people have 401k plans. Now, why I say 50 to 70 million, why such a vast difference? Because you'll be surprised how many people have old 401ks. They forget about it, all right? Right now, by the age of 40, the average person's had 11 jobs. So you've had 401ks. I find money all the time. There's ways you can find just lost funds. I'll actually drop that in the description below. So about 50 to 70 million Americans participating in 401ks, and 61% of 401ks, the primary asset accumulated in there are mutual funds. So your 401k is in some kind of mutual fund. So now adding private equity, that's going to be a huge difference. So what happened is this, folks. Last week, August 7th, President Trump did the executive order to actually have private equity as part of what 401k plans were having. Now, he signed that. It went over to the DOL, the Department of Labor. And Department of Labor has 180 days pretty much to review, make sure everything's good to go, put it in a hardcore paperwork, say, hey, guys, this is X, Y, Z. You need to follow these rules. Bam, bam, bam. Once the Department of Labor goes through that, then it's going to go out. And how's it implemented? That could go from months or may take years. Who knows? So even though it's in writing, it might take a little bit more time. Now, you have a regulatory timeline. Some of you guys may have heard the SEC, and I'm not talking football, the Southeastern Conference. I'm talking the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. All right, they're going to go through the regulatory rules and make sure everything's good to go. So even though we signed the executive order, it's not like your 401k next month is going to automatically be private equities. Okay, it's going to be a process. So this is actually good for a lot of you guys to know, hey, what am I going to do? What's going to be my game plan? Am I going to move money out? Am I going to stop contributing? If you're old enough, can I do an in-service distribution? Or folks looking for a rollover? Some of you guys may look for strategic rollouts. You know, different strategies depending if you're working there, or old 401k, new 401ks, all that kind of stuff. But the main goal pretty much for this is 401k participants, right, which is you want to have access to alternative assets. That's the main thing. So it could be like your private equity. We're talking real estate, infrastructure, cryptos, all these things that could give you potential for higher return. They want to kind of be able to factor in. But that's going to be a huge policy shift, guys, a huge policy shift. Why? Because historically, this kind of stuff, when you start talking, commodities, which is huge, private equity, all this kind of infrastructure, all this kind of stuff, primarily speaking, that was just reserved for what? Big time companies, big time players, okay, big time investors, the institutions, all that kind of stuff. So it's now kind of shifting. Now, when it comes to PE, which is private equity, all right, there's about $13 trillion in estimated global private equity assets, okay? That's under management. Under management, that's a term you will learn when you hear a lot of financial advisors say, hey, I got 12 million under management, meaning they're managing a lot of different portfolios from people to be able to take care of that. All right. Then you have about 1.1 trillion is in the global private equity fundraising. All right. That's what happened pretty much in 2024. So it's actually down. All right. 1.1 trillion in the private equity funding in 2024 is down about 24%. So think about it. So that's 1/4 of their portfolio pretty much. As a big time player, hey, we're down a quarter. If you're a big time institution, you start seeing this. Well, we got to figure out how we're going to bump those numbers up. Wolf of Wall Street, those are rookie numbers. They got to pump their numbers up. So it's a lot of different things. But what happens now is it gives you a difference for liquidity. And here's where it's getting scary, because a lot of times with private equity, funds are regularly locked in a place. It could be like for 5 years, 10 years plus, all those kind of things. Different. We're going to see if they structure it different. But the big thing with private equity is the fee structure. They have what they call the 2 and 20 rule. All right, that's huge. Now, what's the 2 and 20 rule? This right here. I want to see how they're going to do this myself. Is how it's really going to change stuff. What private equity, when people are managing it, the 2 and 20 rule is a 2% annual management fee, and then 20% of the investment profits as carried interest could be charged. So we're talking, look, I'm gonna charge you 2% to manage it, and then whatever goes up, hey, I'm made depending how it looks with interest and all. We can start getting access to about 20% of those gains. So that's huge. So you got to understand, hey, if let's say your account goes from 100,000 to 120,000, that $20,000 profit, they may be able to access and fee and charge those fees for 20% of that $20,000 gain. So depending how it works, it could be huge. That's why we need to see what the Department of Labor is going to do. Now, who uses private equity the most? Is big, like I said, big time institutions. They're using it, high net worth, ultra high net worth. So you have what you call HNW, high net worth. You got UHNW, ultra high net worth, people that are making that money. So they're ones that regularly use a lot of private equity, retail investors, big time companies. Historically, they have a minimal participation, but now with this, it could actually be huge for them. So you might see retail investors starting to go into this huge. All right, now who benefits the most? Obviously, it's larger institutions. That's why people are afraid. 401ks are supposed to be structured for you, but now we're talking institutions. They're the ones that are probably going to see a large gain. So that's where people are trying to figure out. So institutions are getting a W. Wealthy individuals are getting a huge W. All right, all that kind of stuff. And then also younger 401k investors. If you're younger, like you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, you're locking stuff up 5 to 10 years, you're good to go. But what about someone that's 61, 62? You start locking that. I want to see how that's going to work. So you got to understand. So if you're someone that's a near retirement, that could be huge. That could hurt you. If you have a small balance account, all right, you have a 15,000, 18,000, 20,000 in your 401k, that could really hurt some of you guys. So it may even be more. What if you got 60, 70,000? That could be considered a smaller account. I have clients that have 330,000, 400. I just did a rollover for 300,000 in someone's retirement. I have someone else who has 516,000 in their 401k. So guess what? 18, 20,000, they may not have the same benefit as someone else. So I tell folks a lot, that's huge to understand. Also, people that are lacking financial information and financial knowledge, they're probably going to get hit the worst. So when you look at this, you have to think, man, how bad is it going to be, or how good is it going to be? What possibly could be the main reason? There's a lot of pros. There's a lot of cons. I'm going to break down the pros and cons to the next video. I'm going to break this up. But this is going to be huge with him signing this. Like I said, I've been licensed for the last 10 years, and this came out the blue. I had no idea about this. A lot of folks had no idea about this. But like I said, private equity, they're down about 24% from last year. So guess what? If you got to recoup your numbers, what's the best way to recoup? You got 50 to 70 million people that have 401ks. Easy way to recoup everything. So make sure you guys go to my YouTube. I'm going to have a huge breakdown. But also the next video, I'm going to talk about the pros, the cons of 401k private equity. And I want to hear your thoughts also. So see you on the next one.